Have you ever dreamed of earning a regular paycheck at a genealogy research firm? Today's guest is the owner of a genealogy company. Find out her ideas of a successful candidate. Welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast, the resource for transitional and experienced genealogists who want to create a successful business. I'm your host, Pierre-Louis. Here you'll learn from professionals all around the world who work in the field of genealogy. Are you ready to get started? Then let's get going. Welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast. Today we head to Utah to talk to genealogist Jessica Taylor. Jessica is the president of Legacy Tree Genealogists, a professional genealogy research firm. She is also the co-founder of the Genealogy Business Alliance. Jessica was recognized by the Utah Business Magazine's 40 Under 40 Award in 2018, as well as the Women-Owned Business of the Year by the Small Business Administration in 2017. Jessica, welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I want to dive right in to when you got started with your business in 2004. From what I understand, you created a website, you started running Google Ads. How quickly did you see a response from potential clients?
So I have to think way back. Google Ads is pretty responsive relatively quickly. So not remembering exactly the details, but it's likely that that would have given a response within a few weeks as soon as I had started running those ads.
Well, putting it a different way, after you were open for business, your website is up, you're open for business, how soon did you have clients? Did you have to wait a while, or did you actually outreach to like family and friends and other people as well, and you started to have clients coming in?
So I had a really great advantage, and that is that I worked at the Family History Library at the time. So I had contacts there already. One of my very first clients was a missionary at the Family History Library. Another really steady client early on was a lady who was referred to me through someone who worked at the Family History Library. That was a really fortunate way for me to be able to put my shingle out and start gaining clients. I didn't get a lot of clients through that, but early on it was a great way to get some experience as an individual, private genealogist.
What was your specialty at the Family History Library?
So I was actually a library attendant there, and they don't have that role anymore, but basically I was a librarian. Did a lot of microfilm shifting, a lot of bookshelf reading to make sure all the books were in order, and then just helping patrons and things like that. So it was pretty low level as far as genealogy research goes, but it was a nice way to make contacts in, an industry that I wanted to be part of. And, I ended up going to BYU and getting a bachelor's degree in family history through that experience, and then continued at the Family History Library in that role while I got to know people and got more experience as a professional genealogist. So it was a really fortunate way to get into the industry.
When you started your business back in 2004, I'm assuming it was just you at that point?
Yes and no. So I had a lot of contacts at the library, and my original thought was I wanted to combine forces. I wanted to be able to offer more than just one region of research. My specialty was British Isles in US. That leaves out a whole lot of other countries. So I did collect a group of folks, and we put all of us on that website and marketed it that way pretty much from the beginning.
And when you had the business established like that, was it sort of a consortium of genealogists as opposed to a company with employees?
Yeah, at that time, I didn't have any employees. It was all, we're going to, contract this. And there was a big learning curve with that, Originally, I thought, well, these folks are amazing genealogists. This will be great. I'll, bring in the clients with marketing and hand it to them, and they'll do their thing. And I quickly learned that if you want a company that has consistent branding, you have to create that. You can't just hand that to a genealogist and expect them to give you what you want without really detailing what you need back and making sure that that branding is consistent and style is consistent. And there's just a lot that goes into trying to create a product with multiple people, but in a consistent way. Does that make sense?
What I think you're saying is that that's a lot easier to do when you have a company and everyone's fully bought into that company, as opposed to being a consortium where people are giving part of themselves to you, but not all of themselves. Is that right or wrong?
Yeah, I think that there's an advantage there for sure. But either way, you can take that product that that person has given you and you can style it according to your liking. As long as everybody is on the same page about what a work for hire is and what they're giving you and what is expected, you can make that happen either way.
So were you saying really that what you needed to do was like give them branded marketing materials and the tools to brand themselves as the company while working for Legacy Tree at that point?
No, more in line of report writing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're talking about product consistency.
Yes.
Ah, and that's so important. Brand consistency and product consistency are both so important.
Yes, and I guess when I say branding, I think of our product and our reputation is so tied to our brand. So yeah, I interchange those phrases.
All right. So in 2010, you moved to Macau for 2 years with your husband's job. And at that point, you hired a business manager to help run the business back home. What was it like running a business from halfway around the world?
Yeah, so timeline wise, I did hire that manager in 2010 or 2011. We didn't leave for Macau until 2013. So my hiring of that manager had some different purposes and was already in place before we had left. As far as running the company from halfway across the world, it was a big challenge. And I learned a lot in that time. It was difficult. There were times, when I would wake up at 3 a.m. to run a meeting, and that was just the reality and what you do, and you grow up and and do those hard things. But it was good. I don't regret it at all. It was a great life experience. Absolutely.
Was the experience of hiring a business manager the first impetus for growth for your company?
No, I actually had hired a project manager back in 2008. And that was, I think, the first big step, because at that time I gave that person all of my clients. And I said, you now care for these people, and here's how you do it, and here are the steps. That was a big change and a big step in starting to take off hats and starting to see the business not as me, but as something that I work on and administrate and enable other people to grow. And I think that that's really important. So that was in 2008. 2000, I want to say 11 is when I brought on the manager. And that was quite a risk, and it had some pros and some cons. I'm not sure that I would do it in that same way again, looking back. But I did learn a lot from her. And that's always been really important too. I came into this industry as a genealogist. I did not come into this industry as a business person, which is unfortunate. And I think a lot of us struggle in that same way, where we love genealogy, we know genealogy, and then here we are trying to market and trying to be the company CFO and all these other hats that are really important that we have to learn. So a lot of that learning for me came through employees that I hired and learned from. And that was really, really important.
Was the business manager that you hired, was that an experienced business manager, somebody outside the field of genealogy?
Yeah, she was not a genealogist.
So you describe Legacy Tree Genealogists as a 40-employee remote-based company. Does that mean that you don't have an office and everyone works from home?
Mostly, yes. We have an executive office, meaning it's a virtual space where, well, we have two actually, where clients can mail physical copies of things and where we can meet in person if we need to. So We can have company meetings there or meet with a client or something like that. We have one in Salt Lake City and one in London. Other than that, yes, we are all remote. And for us, it has worked great. And I wouldn't change it, I don't think ever, because it helps us a lot in being able to hire top talent and not have to make them live in a particular place. So, do you want to hear a funny story about our remoteness?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So we've been around for, I guess, 16 years now. So years ago, there wasn't really such a thing as a virtual office, but I knew that I needed one. Back then, we didn't have Dropbox either, and things like that. So we were passing physical copies of records back and forth to each other. And most of us were local at that time, our genealogists and things. We were working at the Family History Library. It was much more Salt Lake City centric. Anyways, we didn't have virtual office capabilities, but I needed something close to the Family History Library. So I walked down Main Street looking for possibilities. And I ended up at I don't know if you're familiar with Main Street in Salt Lake, but the McIntyre building, it was over by the Rite Aid. I'm not sure that it's still there. It's over by the new City Creek Mall that's all fancy now, but it's an old building. Anyway, so I kind of went building to building, seeing who could work out a deal with me. And I ended up at the McIntyre building. And on one of the floors, I think the fourth floor, there was an empty lobby area with some built-in filing cabinets. And so I tracked down the owner of this floor, and they let us rent out one filing cabinet in their empty lobby. And for a couple of, handful of years, that was our physical file Dropbox area, where genealogists could leave documents and our editors could pick them up and go through the project to make sure it was good and ready to go to the client. And then that could go to our project manager. And anyway, that's how we used to do things before.
That is so funny.
We left a little candy drawer in there for the genealogists too, so they got some candy when they brought us their project.
So the reviewers, they would go and they would pick up whatever somebody else has written and go to the coffee shop and read it and maybe make their edits and then go put it back in the file cabinet?
Well, kind of, yeah. Our project managers would meet separately. So there was kind of a two-step process where the editor would take it from the McIntyre building and then that editor would get it over to the project managers when they met. And for a long time, we met in somebody's living room. That's just how things were done. And we've always been a very flexible company and very, I don't want to say overly employee centric because that's not healthy either, but we try to make things work in a way that works for our people. And that might mean letting them choose when they work in the day because they need to go pick up kids from elementary school and then they work in the evening, or, we really try to make this company work for our people. And I think that is really important because it helps us not have a lot of turnover and be able to have really great people who want to be part of this. So anyway, that's how we've done things.
So you have staff that live and work locally in Utah and remotely, so like all across the country and all across the world. What are some of the challenges of making all the employees, regardless of location, feel like part of the team?
Yeah. So I think one thing is that we are all equals in that regard. So we don't have, a group of people who get to see each other every day and then this other group who feel not part of that team, if that makes sense. So the culture is the same no matter where you are. But we have a lot of tools that we use. We've got chat. So we've got like a break room, chat room. So we can chat about anything we want, our new desk, our new grandbaby, our new pet, whatever. And then every team has their own chat room as well. So any questions that come up, they can just chat that really quickly. What else? I mean, we have regular meetings. They're just through Zoom. So we see each other, just not physically, but we see each other's faces and we have those regularly scheduled meetings, staff meetings, team meetings, training meetings. We have regular one-on-ones. So, employee and manager has a regularly scheduled one-on-one time over Zoom where they see each other and they can talk over questions. And then we also have skip level one-on-ones where, I'll meet with people who might have a different direct manager, but we can have that direct contact as well. What else? We have a yearly in-person retreat. So everybody in the US who's an employee flown into Salt Lake, and we get together for a couple of days and do fun things, do trainings, do meetings, lots of things like that. Yeah, I don't know. It's just how our culture has been. We all know each other pretty well, just aren't in person very often.
For the break room and stuff like that, do you use Slack or some other tool?
Yeah, so we looked into Slack, but we are in Google Chats. We're pretty Google-centric for a lot of our tools, so.
You have full-time, part-time, and freelance workers. What's the difference between them?
Sure. So full-time is 40 hours a week. We do actually stress that our full-time employees don't work more than 40 hours a week, and we allow them to bank any extra time that they might put in because we think work-life balance is really important. Full-time employees are 40 hours a week. They have medical benefits. They have 401k, dental, health, vision, life insurance. Our part-time employees are 25 to 29 hours a week, and they have access to a lot of those benefits as well, just not the medical, but holiday pay, paid time off, 401k, disability. So that's part-time. And then our freelancers, they just have a lot more independence. If they want to take 6 months off and not do anything for us, they have the ability to tell us that. They don't want to do a project, they don't have to. Some people opt for that and would prefer to have that flexibility. And so we give them that option as well as any of our people we work with outside of the US. They all are contractors.
If you were to hire remote subcontractors right now, what would be the top 2 qualifications or skills that you would be looking for from them?
Obviously, research skill is a given. So I'm going to talk about 2 others after that, if you don't mind. Once you are good at research and you can find things quickly, for me, 2 other top skills are the ability to communicate that research. So can you put the pieces together? Can you make a case involving a lot of different circumstantial evidence and documents and say it's most likely that so-and-so is the ancestor of so-and-so, and here's why, and here's how I justify the time that we took, and all of that. That ability to communicate in writing is really important as a genealogist. The other one I will say is dependability. There have been times when we work with really amazing genealogists who are very talented, but the problem is that they are, for whatever reason, unable to either give up the search on time or just put in the work that it takes to pull all those pieces together and write it up. And so they push deadlines out, and they just can't provide the product on time. And that's, obviously very important when you have a client who's expecting it by a certain date. So I'd say those 2 things.
For the first one there that you were talking about, the ability to put ideas together and to be able to justify your work and things like that, how do you check for that in advance? I mean, do you give potential employees like a little research project that kind of tests for that? Or do you just go on vibe based on people's experience?
So we do a couple of things. Sometimes we do a test project, and, we try to keep it short. We don't want to ask people to do a lot of free time for us, but yes, depending on the role, we have done that, because the other thing that we need to be able to see is how quickly can you triage research? How well can you say, okay, I've only got a certain amount of time, so first I'm going to do the most important things, and then I'm going to do these other things if I have time. How much progress can you make when you're under a time limit? So anyways, we do test projects sometimes. And then sample reports are a big one. So just being able to see what somebody has already done in the past and how well they can communicate in writing. And then I guess I should say we have a pretty long onboarding process where we will only assign half a project at first, look over it, then let them do the remaining half. We'll do that for multiple projects to begin with, just because it can be hard to gauge somebody's skill until they actually produce something for you, and we want to make sure that our clients get the best product that they can. So that's also an important part of how we onboard people.
In 2017, I read that you had 20 employees, and now you have 40 employees. So you've doubled in size since that time. What is causing the growth in your company?
I think that industry-wide, there's been quite a bit of growth. So there's that part of it. People are talking about DNA sales slowing down a little bit. That will probably affect growth in the future for all of us. But that's been a part of things. The other part for us is that we've been fortunate to be, we built it this way, but we've become a forerunner here in this industry. And so other genealogy related companies partner with us. They want us to be the ones who provide the research portion of what their clients need. So we've brought on a lot of partners. We had partners before 2017, but since then we've brought more on, particularly 23andMe is the biggest partner that we've brought on since 2017. We're on their website. Any of their customers who take a DNA test and are looking for help are sent directly to us. So that was a big one. We also partnered with a lot of genealogy software companies since that time. So Roots Magic, other software companies, Roots Finder, Legacy. I'm trying to think of a timeline here. Travel agents have started partnering with us. So those are some other newer partners in the last few years.
So I can see, obviously, what you as legacy tree genealogists get out of the partnership with the big companies. What does the big company get out of the partnership with you?
A couple of things. One thing that they get is happier clients, happier customers, less customer support that they have to spend. So you imagine a customer takes a DNA test, they find out that their father wasn't their father. Holy cow, how did this happen? What does this mean? They want to talk to somebody about it. That no longer has to be on 23andMe's customer support shoulders. They can say, you know what, we've partnered with this company who can help you, and here's where you can go. So that's a big help for them. And then we also pay commissions to our partners. When they send us a lead and that person orders with us, then we'll send them a commission for that. So it's helpful for them as well in that way where, it's very simple and profitable for them to be able to do that.
Just out of curiosity, what sort of relationship maintenance do you or somebody in your company have to do in regards to that partnership, like every year? Do you sort of have to check in? I'm coming to this conversation here with you. I don't know anything about running a company of 20 or 40 people. So do you have to reserve time and say, okay, yeah, we need to schedule a meeting with that company, lunch or something, and make sure they're happy, we're happy, and all that kind of thing? Do you have to do that, or does it just keep, once you have it set, you don't have to do anything else?
Oh, you definitely have to keep that relationship. Yeah. So we have an awesome marketing director who I'll give a shout out for. She's fantastic. She meets with them, regularly over the phone or Zoom or something most of the time. But every month we send them stats so they understand, what our conversion rates were and how well we're doing with those leads that they're sending us. We send them highlights from research that we did for those clients. So nothing, that would be a privacy concern, but, here are some top things that we researched and things like that. And then we provide them with other support too. So one of our major partners is MyHeritage, and we'll often do, a joint Q&A session with them, or we'll write articles for them, anything that we can do to also give them value and help that relationship be nurtured and help them progress in their own goals and what they're trying to do, and, have some professional genealogist support in that. We want to do that and help them.
On the big picture of all the things that you have to do in a year to keep your company running, how important is relationship building, not just with your partners like you've just described, but anybody? You've got your customers, you've got your partners, you've got the people that you work with, like when you go to Roots Tech, to make the conferences happen. How important is the relationship aspect, and who does that fall to? Does that fall to your marketing director mostly, or does it fall to you as well? I'm just trying to give my audience a sense of the fact that there's a lot more to running a genealogy business than just doing research reports.
It is really important. I don't know how to quantify that. It's a combination of so many things. I mean, you can have great relationships, but if the product that you produce is something people don't trust or don't respect, then that's going to undermine any relationship work that you're doing. I'm not sure how to answer that, but it is definitely a big part of what I do and what our marketing director does and what so many in our company do. We've tried to really empower all of our employees to be those relationship builders, to give them the tools and support and incentives that they need as well to go out and teach and to go out and be compensated if they bring us clients or if they bring us a new affiliate partner. We really try to empower the whole company to do that because it is really important.
All right. So you said that in relationships is not enough. You have to have that good product. And you and Legacy Tree Genealogists are rated the highest client-rated genealogy research firm. So how do you ensure consistency with your end product?
Yeah. That has been part of our culture from the beginning, and I'm really glad for that. So we have a client assurance manager in the company, and her role is to assure that everything that we send out is high quality. She runs a team of editors, and these editors are genealogists, but they also come to us. We have one with a journalism background as well. And they have a lot of experience in writing, in editing, and in genealogy, in many areas of genealogy. And so everything that we send to a client goes through them first. And that just helps us flag any issues, holes, something that might have been missed that shouldn't have been missed, writing style, branding, like we talked about, just making sure that things are consistent across the board.
All right, shifting gears a little bit here. I know at one point during your career, probably early on, you used the Small Business Administration SCORE Counseling and Mentoring Program. What was that experience like, and who would you recommend do that sort of thing?
What I've used SCORE for is one-on-one counseling. There are volunteers, and I'm actually now a SCORE volunteer as well, so I can provide counseling to others. But you work with someone who has owned a business in the past, and you can ask them whatever questions you have. And for me, it was useful especially in the early days. I was kind of isolated. I did not know a lot of entrepreneurs. Luckily for me, my dad was an entrepreneur. He was basically a one-man business, so it was different. But it was useful with SCORE to just be able to talk to somebody else who had been there before, could provide some perspective and advice. So that's SCORE. The SBA has great programs. I took a course with them called Emerging Leaders or Interrise. They're countrywide. It's about, I think, a 3-month course where you go weekly in person, and they teach you lots of modules, a marketing module and a finance module, all kinds of things. And that was really useful as well. I've sent others there in our industry because it was really good. SBDC also has one-on-one counseling and people who will do things like provide a free business valuation for you and let you know what your business is valued at. They'll run models for you. Anyway, they're very helpful as well. And they also have courses. There's one sponsored by Goldman Sachs called 10,000 Small Businesses through the SBDC. That's also a really good course, I hear. I'm scheduled to start that one in the fall. We'll see if it happens with COVID, but I'm excited and looking forward to that too. So yeah, these are great supports. They're free. I think anybody who wants to take private clients would benefit by utilizing these resources, because anybody who's doing that needs to understand their profit and loss. They need to understand, income statements and cash flow and balance sheet and marketing. I mean, there are lots of pieces that they need to understand if they're going to run their own business. So definitely highly recommend those kinds of resources.
When you were coming into your business, getting it started, what was the weakest link for you? What was the part that wasn't your strength?
I always had felt that finance was my weakest link. And I think I still have a ways to go, but I've really been able to overcome that over time. But I had always wished that when I was in college, I had taken some accounting classes and business finance classes that really would have been useful early on to have understood some of those things from the beginning.
And can I just ask you, what does SBDC stand for?
Salt Lake Small Business Development Center. So I
Oh,
assume there are others elsewhere, but
okay. Yeah, there's lots of business development stuff locally, so people would just have to Google in
yeah.
their area. And one last question about this. The SCORE counselor, was that somebody who had experience in the genealogy industry, or was that just somebody who had a small business? Or
Yeah, not in the industry
okay.
at all. Yeah. And that's okay. There's a lot, business translates across industries, so it doesn't matter if they're in genealogy or not for a lot of questions.
Your company has an all-woman leadership team. Was that intentional?
No. And actually, we do have a male manager now in the company, so we're quite happy about that.
He's not on your website. I just mentioned that.
Yeah, not yet. Yeah. Yep. That was a new change in the last several months. No, I mean, as you know, it seems that genealogy is kind of further on the female spectrum. More females populate the genealogy industry. So no, that just happened.
So what are the core strengths that you bring to your company? And how does having a leadership team allow you to focus on your strengths?
Strengths that I bring to the company. I think that I am skilled at relationship building. I don't mind things like podcasts and things like that. And I think that something that has really helped Legacy Tree is that I don't know how to say this, but I don't need to be the star. I'm okay with bringing on other stars and letting them be the star of their show and what they're doing and enabling them to succeed. So I think that that's really helped Legacy Tree grow because I can't do everything. I've enjoyed doing each piece, but as soon as I can give it away, I'm happy to do that, and somebody else can focus on that piece and run with it much better. Having a leadership team, enables me to do that as well. And I really trust them. I really respect them. Our leadership team is amazing. They really are. I'm able to let them do their thing and let them grow the thing that they're in charge of. And then I don't have to worry about it so much. I mean, I still have to manage it and make sure that those pieces happen and support them. But having them take on those things provides more room for me to go to whatever the next level needs to be, right? And it's interesting because as business owners, we often don't even see that next level or really understand it until we've given away a hat and we have the bandwidth to start thinking about that next level and wrap our heads around it and start going in that direction. So I think it's important that we allow other people to be part of that when possible.
How has the demand for DNA-related services impacted your business?
Well, it definitely has. We have an entire DNA team now. Even in 2007, this was a thing, right? But it was kind of a new thing in a lot of ways. And yeah, now, a lot of our clients even come to us for the specific purpose of finding a biological parent. And even if they don't, there are often times when that has to be addressed, or there are brick walls that we can solve through DNA now. So, it's helping us to be more successful. And it's definitely grown the industry and grown the pool of people who are interested in genealogy research, where before they might not have thought about it or cared enough to hire somebody.
You have clients worldwide. Did you purposely seek out global clients, or did it just happen that way?
So that was primarily a function of being the research partner of MyHeritage. When that happened, that was in 2014 or 15. That really grew our international client base just based on who their users are. So that's the primary reason. We don't specifically market a lot outside of the US and Canada. We do somewhat, but it's primarily a function of our partners.
So does that look like you would have somebody in country? So I can't imagine that you have on your staff people who are fluent in absolutely all these languages. So you would have somebody in country who would work as the interface for that? Or do you have an employee on staff that speaks all these languages?
Primarily, we're communicating through email with them. We do have a company that we contract with at times when we need to talk on the phone with them. And so we've got a translation happening on the phone. But otherwise, it's primarily email with these clients. I speak Spanish and Portuguese, at least I muddle my way through. Sometimes I'll come in and help with those clients, but yeah, primarily written.
So speaking of the foreign language ability, there's the Spanish and Portuguese for you. Paul Woodbury speaks Spanish and French, I believe.
He does, yeah. So sometimes we'll pull him in. Yeah.
Do you have other members of staff who also can utilize their foreign language skills?
Yes, I mean, they're more confident written, but occasionally we have to do some verbal. There's really not a lot more beyond those languages, though. I'd have to look it up before I I peg anybody as a fluent speaker or anything.
I read an article you recently posted on LinkedIn. And in that article, you mentioned that you utilize KPIs. I had to look that up. Key performance indicators to help set performance expectations for your staff. Can you give us an example of what those KPIs are like?
Sure. So KPIs are, they're basically just a metric or a stated goal, something numerical primarily that you can report on, and everybody knows what it is and what it needs to be. And it's important in making sure that the company is profitable and making sure that the employees are efficient, making sure that the quality is where it can be as much as you can tie a new number to that. So examples, I mean, sales goals basically are an example of a KPI. Billable expectations could be a KPI. Research hours completed for the month by individual or by team or by company could be a KPI. Anything like that where you can report on it consistently and it's very clear and easy to communicate to everybody makes a good KPI.
How does the sales goals KPI work? Because the researchers aren't out selling. So who is that applying to and how do they impact it?
Yeah, so we have a sales team and they're amazing. So that's their focus. They work with those new leads that come in and help them understand what a genealogy project is and what kind of genealogy project that person needs. And so they would have sales related KPIs.
So they're the front line for prospective clients who send in an email?
Yes.
That's very interesting. And so then when they get converted into a client, they say, yes, I'm going to give you a down payment or whatever, however it works. Then it goes over to the research side?
Yep. And then we have a whole client services team that's headed by an awesome director and management. And they take care of the client from there.
It's very involved.
Yeah. It is. Sometimes you think, well, we'll just put out the shingle and do genealogy research. But once you bring in more people, you have to parse those things out and it can be kind of involved.
See, that's exactly what I mean, because most of my audience, I imagine, are working independently on their own. And so whether they know it or not, whether they realize it, whether they like it or not, they have to do all those things. And they may do them better or worse to varying degrees. And not really realize the importance of each aspect and the different skills involved in each aspect. It's hard, I think, when you are just one person and you have to be the one who seals the deal and gets the client in, and then you have to turn around and be the person who does the research. Then you have to turn around and be the person who guarantees quality and all these other things.
Yeah, I mean, the variety is nice, so there's kind of a nice aspect to that depending on the person's personality. But yeah, there are a lot of hats.
How do you find colleagues to turn to for support and ideas when there are so few other multiple employee genealogy research firms?
As a business owner, you really don't have to only get advice from a genealogy business owner. All those hats that we talked about are worn by business owners worldwide in lots and lots of different industries. It's all the same, right? You have to find the possible clients, you have to sell to the client, you have to produce the product, you have to make sure the product is profitable, you have, all of those things. I try to build a lot of relationships inside and outside the genealogy industry, but I'm part of a couple of business owner groups that are not genealogy focused at all. And we meet regularly and we talk about each other's issues, and that's really helpful. Starting the Genealogy Business Alliance with Janet Havorka has also been really helpful as well. We've started monthly calls with genealogy business owners, and that's been good too, just to talk over each other's issues. And even if, those owners might not have the same problems that I'm trying to solve and vice versa, there are steps that have been the same. There are questions that are the same. And so being able to talk those over with other people is really important.
What advice would you give someone who's interested in starting a genealogy research firm?
I think that one of the things that is most overlooked is marketing. I think that we tend to discount the time and the cost that's involved in marketing and sales. And so one piece of advice would be, don't undervalue yourself by selling your product or your service for too little, because what will happen is you'll run out of gas. You won't have enough profit to be able to market. And marketing is a really big piece. That's probably the advice I would give.
And finally, how do you maintain a balance between work life and home life?
I have set hours, and during my set work hours, I am working. And during my set non-work hours, I am not working. And I don't check my email, and I turn off my computer, and I close the office door. And if I come back because I need to do something personal on the computer, I turn the computer back on, but I don't turn on Outlook. I try to keep those things separate. And then I try to move around a lot. So as in, I try to hike and run and exercise and move my body, just because I think that that's really healthy. And if you work at a desk for lots of hours of the day, you've got to be moving as much as you can the other hours of the day.
All right, Jessica, I think it's time to enter the lightning round. This is where I ask you quick questions that are generally helpful for our audience, for the people who are building their ways toward becoming a professional.
Okay. Well, and before we jump in, I just want to thank people for listening. So thanks for listening. And if anybody who's listening ever wants to reach out, wants some support, has a question, please feel free to reach out to me. I remember how isolating and scary some parts of business ownership can be, and I'm happy to help. So, I'm on LinkedIn, or I guess LinkedIn's probably the best way. So, but yeah, feel free to reach out.
And they can also join the Genealogy Business Alliance. You have a Facebook page, right?
Yeah, it's a Facebook group. And yep, Genealogy Business Alliance. Please join us. It's really great just to have conversation with other people in this industry and be able to ask questions. So,
all right, here we go with the lightning round. What was the one thing you were most afraid of in starting your business?
Obviously, I'm always afraid of running out of money, I guess, because you got to have money to keep the business going. But besides that, I spent about the first 10 years of running Legacy Tree afraid of being viewed as too young. I started it a year out of college, so I was 24 or 25. And so that whole first decade, I felt kind of out of place and like I was too young. And it was unfortunate that I felt that way. I'm really thankful that like Next Gen has started. I really believe in what they're doing to help younger people not feel out of place, because there's really, especially now, no need for that, especially because of our digital needs and our genetic needs, and being too young is not really an issue anymore. But I felt that way when I was running Legacy Tree as a young person. So that was kind of my fear, I guess. That people would call me out and say, "You're too young. What are you doing?" I don't know.
What is the best advice you've ever received from someone else?
This is kind of cliche, but I really like the advice to work on your business rather than in it. I think it's important that you step back and try to administer and give away hats and stuff like that. So work on your business rather than in it.
What is one specific action listeners can take in the next 24 hours to help them transition into a genealogy career?
So if they want to be a genealogist, so wait, in the next 24 hours?
Yeah, that's just to limit you to make that's just to make you pick one thing.
Okay. Well, I think that I would say start practicing genetic genealogy in some way. Everybody who wants to be a genealogist needs to also understand genetic genealogy.
You know, that is great advice, and nobody has ever suggested that.
Holy cow, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
It's unbelievable. Yes. Everybody will start suggesting it now, but...
It's super important now. You have to understand DNA testing.
Yeah. If you can recommend one book for our listeners, what would it be?
All right. So the book I'm going to recommend is called Managing by the Numbers. It's by Chuck Kramer, Kremer, and Ron Rizzuto, Rizzuto. It's just really good for understanding income statements and profit and loss and gross margin versus net margin and things that business owners as the CFO of the business have to understand.
Great. Like it. What business subjects would you recommend for anyone who's just starting to create their business?
Well, I mentioned marketing. I think I would say marketing.
And finally, give our audience one parting piece of advice and then tell us how we can get in contact with you.
Okay. One parting piece of advice, don't be afraid to get help. And then when you get help, like if you hire some help, try to be as clear as you can about what's expected and then be generous with your appreciation for that help. It's so important that you appreciate what those people are bringing to you because they are key to growing your business. And then what was your other?
How can we get in contact with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably best. I think it's Jessica M. Taylor on LinkedIn. No, I'm not sure. Yeah,
I'll make sure
come and find me, message me. And Facebook, yeah, the Genealogy Business Alliance is a really great place to be if you're in genealogy and you have a business.
Jessica Taylor, thank you so much for coming on the Genealogy Professional Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. It was fun to talk and hopefully helpful.
I don't know about you guys, but I learned so much from this discussion with Jessica Taylor. She taught us what genealogy firms look for when hiring staff, the two most important things being the ability to communicate research analysis and dependability. So being the best researcher is not essential, but being a timely researcher who can be relied upon is. That is something we should all consider when thinking about our own businesses. Do we provide timely, dependable service to our own clients? She shared with us how her company works in a virtual environment and how they help the employees feel like a team. And she also talked about the benefits of partnering with other organizations and getting business help. In news this week, as I mentioned last time, if you'd like to contribute to supporting the podcast, then I would ask, if it's possible, that you recommend me as a virtual speaker to your local library, historical, or genealogical society. Any money earned from speaking now goes directly to supporting the podcast. You can find more details about this in the show notes at thegenealogyprofessional.com. If you want to connect with me, join me on Facebook in the TGP Action Group. You can comment, share your expertise, and ask questions. Search for the TGP Action Group on Facebook or find the URL in the show notes. If you're not on Facebook, follow the Genealogy Professional on LinkedIn. You can get new episode notices there. Go to LinkedIn and search for the Genealogy Professional and hit the follow button. And of course, don't forget that you can now find the Genealogy Professional podcast on Spotify and YouTube. That's it for this time. Until we meet again, keep improving your business skills and take at least one step to push your business forward. The Genealogy Professional Podcast is a production of Fieldstone Common Media. Copyright 2020. Executive producer, Miriam Pierre-Louis. Creative producer, George Edwards. Technical director, Jean-Luc Pierre-Louis Jr.